Before I spell that out, Tanvi, I think it's very important to re-emphasize a few things to our viewers because data can sometimes be intimidating and I think sometimes people can get confused between different data points. First up, the big clarity, this is not a projection. These are based on actual numbers and they are numbers derived from actual government data which is updated as on yesterday. So this is the absolute authentic official data. Remember, corona is a notifiable disease, so any case that happens has to be notified to the authorities. Whether it's actually getting done or recorded is a different discussion, but this is the official data and these are actual numbers that we are tracking. Also remember, the Times Network has been doing this Protiviti study for the last 2.5 months now. So this is not something that we've done just once. We've been tracking it for the last 2.5 months since the corona crisis really picked up pace in India. And we've been observing trends on how different states are reacting and responding on terms of the on ground and how that response is actually translating itself to the data, to the numbers of cases that is being reported as well. One important point for everyone to understand who's watching this right now is this. Whenever the number of recoveries are higher than the number of fresh new active cases is when you can say that the state is doing a good job. Because clearly, if the number of people who are recovering from an ailment after having contracted it is higher than the number of fresh people who are getting that ailment, you seem to have done a good job. And that's why if you see in our graphic, there is an eye formation where almost like it looks like an eye. The wider that particular eye, the better your state will be. And whenever the x-axis and the y-axis crosses or comes close to each other is where the problem starts. And that's why it's very important to watch those graphics very carefully and to see how the states have performed over the last 2.5 months, and that will give you an indicator of how easy you can breathe going forward. Now, coming to your question, Tanvi, about the southern states, yes, southern states were a lot like the Indian cricket team. They started off very, very well. The top order did exceedingly well. Kerala was a great example of how they spotted the trend early. In fact, as early as even January, for instance, that they realized that there is something, and I remember, and I know that our reporters on the ground have been telling us that even in January, much before even anyone was talking about corona, the health ministry had started doing discussions about what was happening in Wuhan, because they knew there are a lot of Kerala residents who work in that part of the world. But while that was then, in the last 15 days or 20 days or so, some bit of movement of people has started happening. People have started arriving back in the state. And obviously, that could be one reason why you are now seeing a bit of a rise in the number of cases. Tamil Nadu was always, Tanvi, a bit of a problem state. I mean, if you remember, right from the time when the lockdown was first announced, our ground reports were constantly pointing out how the implementation of the policy on ground in Tamil Nadu was not always very effective. And there was also a lack of uniformity. And that again gets, reflected in the data. Karnataka, amongst the 5 southern states, seems to be doing the better of them all. Bangalore, certainly as a city, has done probably the best amongst all metros. And that actually is a good sign and a very good news. You were right about Telangana. There is a problem in the way the reportage is happening. There is not much transparency. The government has been very opaque about sharing information, specifically testing data and so on and so forth. So that's a little bit of a tough nut to crack. But yes, the larger picture, if I can set it up at the start, is this, that the south of India, which had started off exceedingly well, is now beginning to show some problems in terms of the rise, and that's where we have to watch out for. As opposed to, say, the west of India, which had started off very badly and has now started stabilizing, so has central and probably north as well, except possibly Haryana, which is a bit of a basket case, as well as Delhi, where the pattern has been very opposite. Tanvi.